Welcome friends to the lecture series of marketing research and analysis. Today we are continuing with the last lecture that we were discussing about the marketing research process, and in the last lecture we had discussed about the research design, brief about the types of research designs and the sampling process, the scaling process, and how the researcher should be addressing those issues of identifying the right sample and collecting the right sample and collecting to the right scale, right. So, because if the researcher makes a mistake, then it would be maybe a problem, right, and the entire research process could become questionable. So, continuing with it, so we will today talk about the data collection method. So, here we had maybe concluded in the last lecture. So, once you are with the through with the sampling and the scaling techniques, then the researcher needs to collect the data, and here we say there are two methods. One is the qualitative method and versus the quantitative method. So, the approach can be described as the qualitative versus quantitative. As the name suggests, you can understand that qualitative methods are those methods where there is very little involvement of numbers, but very largely it is a the understanding of the people in terms of a thought is more of there, right. For example, I would say how would somebody describe the market, right. So, the describing the market in terms of a language or an abstract is more qualitative, and explaining the same market maybe in terms of a scale, maybe how good is the market in a scale of let us say 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, would be called as a quantitative method, right. So, describing how the researcher wants to describe, or the researcher is interested to collect the data, whether he wants to collect it qualitatively, because sometimes it has been seen that qualitative experiments are better in some cases over quantitative, and in other cases it has been seen that quantitative are better over qualitative in vice versa. So, as you have understood maybe by this time, that qualitative is generally is good when the researcher has very little idea about the subject and he cannot actually create a mechanism of collecting the data in a quantitative form. For example, let us say what makes somebody, let us say example, what makes somebody a good singer, or what is the reason behind a company's success, right. So, when I say what is the reason behind a company's success, why is that one company is performing much better in comparison to the others in the same industry, then in such a condition if I go for a quantitative method, maybe I would be missing several variables, important variables, and they would not even be reflected well in my study. So, in such a condition the researcher may go for a qualitative method by taking interviews of certain experts of the people in the industry, or maybe experts in the area, you can understand that way, right, or even the consumers or somebody. So, whenever the researcher needs to go for a qualitative data, he should be very clear that qualitative data are, for example, the techniques that you follow, as I had said, maybe is focus group, right, in-depth interviews, right. So, these kind of processes are involved here, right, case study methods, right. On the other hand, quantitative is very simple. In any survey or that for that, when we calculate through numbers, suppose for example the same company study if you take, and the researcher wants to know how would you explain the distribution in a scale of 1 to 7, and or how what is the condition of the financial performance of the company in, let us say, in millions of dollars. So, in such a condition the data is more quantitative in nature, right. So, when quantitative is available, so one need not go for qualitative, it is not much advisable, right. But if quantitative is not available, so the researcher has less clue about the subject, it is necessary that one goes for a qualitative study. One important technique that is very important is you must have come across, I must have also explained in my classes, is projective techniques. Now, projective techniques are techniques which are used to project what somebody feels about the market or any idea or something, right. So, these are something which are some internal feelings of a person, right, maybe. So, in such a condition to unearth what he feels about or she feels about. In such a condition, projective techniques are very well employed in research, right, and they are very powerful techniques. For example, you have in projective techniques word association, right, sentence completion techniques, right, story building techniques, sentence completion, story building, right. So, you build a story, and from by the way you build the story, the researcher can understand ki what is the going in the consumer's mindset, in the customer's mindset, right, mind. Similarly, the data collection method can also be devised, grouped into primary or secondary method. So, when you say primary, the method is primary, that means it is a fresh study, it is a fresh study. So, the researcher is at the moment going to conduct the study and collect the data and interpret the data, right. Whereas, secondary studies are those where the researcher is using a study which has already been conducted earlier in the past, right. So, for example, let us say I want to understand how people have been behaving in terms of purchase of, let us say, contraceptives, for example. Has there been any change in the purchase of contraceptives in the Indian population? Because Indian population, why I am saying is India has been considered to be a very conservative mindset. People usually avoid talking about things like sex and population control. So, in such a condition, if I want to take the data of the past, what I can do is I can take the data from maybe medicinal companies or contraceptive products, selling companies and all, and collect the data, or from some government sites or reports what has been the trend in the past, right. So, this data that I will collect of the past is nothing but a secondary data that somebody had maybe 10 years back had collected this data, 10 years back had collected this data, and now today I am using by collecting the fresh data maybe in the year 2018, and this was the period maybe from 2008 till 2017, for example. So, by using this data and this fresh data, I may be able to compare and see whether there has been any significant change in the way people are thinking and accepting the contraceptive products. So, now coming to data preparation. So, you as a researcher have done by now you have done significant part of your study, but now comes one of the most important things, data preparation. Now, why I am saying data preparation? When I say data preparation, it means that the researcher needs to prepare the data for what? To prepare the data for final action. Means what? It is like understanding that there is a drama going to be done, and before the drama you do a rehearsal, right. So, why are you doing the rehearsal? You are doing the rehearsal so that you can act better, and whatever you do in the final act, that is the final thing, right. So, you cannot change anything further. So, similarly the data analysis is the final step, right. So, before you enter into the let us say audience, the data has to be prepared, which is I would explain in my language as rehearsal, right. So, if you are rehearsing, you have understood where I should be standing, what I should be talking, how should my body language be, what should be I focusing on, what should be my movement. So, when I am talking about these things, this is where the data preparation comes. So, similarly the data needs to be prepared. So, whether there is some deficiency in the data, for example, while collecting the data you might have ignored some of the facts, correct, you might have. So, if you have ignored these facts, then suddenly when you come for the final on the stage, when you are going for the drama, so at that point you feel that you have done so many, you are lacking so many things. So, how would you cover those things? So, to cover up, it is better that you prepare the data. Now, I will show you what actually preparation of data means, right. So, let us see this. So, data preparation includes what? Now, edit the data. First is editing the data, then is coding the data, editing and coding, right. That means the data that you brought from the field is a raw data, right. This raw data might have several mistakes also into it, because there might be cases of missing values, there can be cases of outliers, as you can see here. So, all these things can be a problem. So, first of all you have to check for those problems, and then properly edit the data and place it in the maybe the Excel sheet or in any software that you are using, right. Similarly, coding of data, why coding is important? Today suppose for example you have done a study and you have taken let us say male and female, right, male versus female. Male you have taken 1 and female you have taken 0. By that after some time maybe you have forgotten, right, you have forgotten. So, when you have forgotten and then suddenly you feel ki what did I say, so what did I take now, because that maybe you will by mistake you will take 1 0 and reverse it. So, it is a mistake. So, that is where we say labeling of data is very important. So, when you do this coding, then coding is followed by labeling. So, coding is to give this 0 and 1, because if I do not code the data in a proper manner, then what happens, it becomes the computer will not understand, or while calculating them all the string variables cannot be always taken well for the study. So, in that condition first you code it into several in forms, like for example 0 is male and 1 is female for example, right. Let us say strongly agree, strongly disagree to strongly agree, now I am saying, right. So, strongly disagree is 1, strongly agree is 7. Now, this is the coding I am doing. So, when I am coding, I can code several string variables or other kind of variables into some kind of a numeric variable, right. Now, once you have done the editing and coding, what happens is, now you are maybe if you are putting in Excel sheet for example, the Excel sheet looks very clear, concise and easy to use, it becomes quite friendly. Otherwise what happens, you might see that the number of columns, the number of rows, they are haphazard, somewhere there is a string data, somewhere there is a numerical data, somewhere there is some other kind of variables. So, by having such kind of a complex data sheet, you might get puzzled and your entire analysis you might get confused also. So, it is best is that you bring the data, code it, edit it and code it and then go for further analysis. But here comes one thing, while you do this editing and coding, you will come across kind of problems that the data might be facing. Now, these problems are, some of these problems are as I have listed here. Now, these things have to be corrected. If you have not corrected, right, if you are not corrected, as I gave you the analogy of a drama, or if you during your rehearsal stage if you have not corrected them and you have take it to the final drama, then the point is final stage, then these problems of data will figure out at the end of the stage performance, and then obviously the audience might not like it, it might not give a desirable result, anything can happen. What is this editing? Let us see, the inspection and correction of the data received from each element of the sample. Now, you are inspecting the data, what the data should be coming. For example, let us say the highest value that can come is from in between 1 and 7, let us say the highest value. Suppose somebody has by mistake has put in a 8, right. So, if you do not edit, if you do not check it, editing, you must have heard the word editing in movies also, movies, programs, TV serials. So, what you are doing by editing? You are cutting out the wrong things or undesirable things and maybe filling it up, replacing it with the proper correct ones. So, if suppose by mistake somebody has put in a 8, for example, I will tell you there have been very popular movies in which the movies have been popular because the editing had done excellent job, right, where sometimes the central character of the movie by mistake had put 2 different socks, right, 2 different colored socks by mistake, he was unaware of it, and while editing they realized that the central character has put 2 different socks. If somebody would see, and then he would be maybe he will become a joke. So, the editing cuts that part and matches it so well that this problem is removed from it. Similarly here, if there is a mistake in the number, or suppose this is something is on strings means alphabetical or words or something, and suddenly there is a number you have put in, so that should not be acceptable. So, because you are accepting strings in this case, it should be only strings. So, this is done through the inspection and correction of the data, right. Coding is transforming the raw data into symbols. So, as I said, the raw data male for example, now male can be put in as let us say 0, female as 1. So, when I am coding it, it is just to make my life simpler. So, either I can understand instead of writing a large long sentence or a big word, I do not want to remember them, I just want to code it into some symbol. For example, let us say I can put in some small symbols. For example, let us say the distribution chain, the distribution chain is effective, right. Now, to how would I write? I would just write like this, distribution underscore effective. So, what I have done is I have just written it in a small way so that I can understand it, right. Measures of central tendency. So, once as we are going into it, we will understand now, we are coming from the we are going to clean the data, correct the data or purify the data. So, here some terms that you need to understand, right. Why you need to understand? Because most of the social science studies that you are doing, which is linked to studies of the market, consumers, economics and all, the data has been presumed to follow a normal distribution, right. So, a normal distribution is the bell shaped distribution, where we say that this is the line where the mean, the median and the mode, they all lie on the same point, right. So, why it is called a central tendency? Let us understand. Central tendency is means that any random variable, you can understand, any random variable tends to lie in the anywhere close to the these three parameters, right. That means any random variable tries to cluster around, group around the mean, median and mode. That is the meaning. That is why it is called central, middle, central tendency, to center around the mean, center around the median, center around the mode. That is the meaning. Okay. So, mean, median and mode, as I said. So, these three important, they are very important and we must understand why they are important, because mean has been the most utilized one, right. The most utilized one is mean, there is no doubt about it, but mean has its own flaws also, its own limitations. Then you have median. Median is basically nothing, mean is the average basically, you can say, and median is the middle point, right, middle point. What I will do is I will clean it up. Okay. So, the median is the middle, right, and mode is the highest frequency, and this is the average, basically mean is the average, right. So, these are the measures of variability, some of the measures, right. Let us see some, I will explain each of them. Let us understand these terms because they are very important when you are studying marketing research. For any research also you need to understand them. So, for example, some of the terms are like, for example, range. What does range mean? Range means, for example, the difference between the highest and the lowest value, right. Standard deviation, what does it mean? Something, what is the difference of any point from the, let us say, the mean, how far the variables or the points are, the data points are from the mean, right. Variance, it is the square of the standard deviation. Quartile deviation or interquartile range. Then quartile means any data is divided into certain quartiles. For example, let us say this is the median, the middle point, right. So, then you divide into several quartiles, Q1, let us say this is Q2, this is Q3. So, by dividing the data, generally we divide into 4 parts, right. When we divide into these quartiles, what is the deviation in between? So, the deviation between, let us say, Q3 minus Q1 tells me the interquartile range, right. So, how much is the interquartile range? Means how much is the deviation between the 2 quarters? That tells us, it is a measure of variability. It tells us how much variability is there in the data. Higher the variability or a very strong variability means that the data is fluctuating a lot, right. So, you then have to, as a researcher, think, why is it fluctuating so much? Is there any specific reason behind it for its fluctuation, or it is good to fluctuate, or sometimes it is some mistake. By mistake, people have not been serious about the data and they have just given some random data, that is why the variability is high. So, if I am not saying variability is good or bad, I am not trying to place it that way, I am just saying variability, if it is there, why it is there, what is the reason behind the variability needs to be checked. Okay. So, just some of the data analysis tools, the basic data analysis tools. Central tendency we discussed, right. Descriptive statistics involves all those like mean, median, mode, standard deviation, variance, interquartile range, all these things comes in. Deviation scores, how much standard deviation and all, frequency distribution, interquartile range, kurtosis. Now, what is this kurtosis? Kurtosis means sometimes the data is too much picked means what? How do I show it? Like this. For example, this is how a normal distribution looks like. For example, if I draw this like this, now what do you understand? Is there any difference between the two diagrams? Just look, have a look. Now, if you see here, the peak is, the data is surrounded very close to the close to the mean, and the pickedness, that means it looks like a more of a very tall, kind of a very tall, or could be, it could be anything, there could be the kurtosis could be, it could be very flattened also, for example it could be something like this. So, in this and this case, if you see the pickedness is quite sufficiently different, right. So, the point is, it could be how is the data surrounded, right, around the random data is surrounded around the mean or the central tendency, the central parameters is important, right. So, similarly median I explained, median is the middle point, mode I explained. So, these are some of the things. Standard score, why standard score is important? Standard score is important because many a times you need to compare variables of different way of different different data, for example. So, if I want to compare, let us say the size of a tiger with the size of an apple, for example, now that is very strange, how can I do that? Yes, I can, but if one thing I do is that if I can standardize the scores, or when there are data of different conditions and if I want to compare them, I need to standardize them first. So, if you can standardize the data, then you compare, then there is no issues, but otherwise if you compare the raw data, it might look very odd and it might be completely wrong, right. So, let us go into each one of them slowly. Mean first. Mean is calculated by adding the values of all observations and dividing the total by the number of observations. So, simple, let us say the population mean is x1 plus x2, all these are the variables, the values, right, n of n observations divided by the n. So, for example, that means 1 by n into sigma xi. Now, let us see this. In a survey of 5 cement companies, the profit earned during a year was 15, 20, 10, 35, 32, right. What is the arithmetic mean of the profit? Now, there are 5 companies, so 1 by 5. So, this is, what is this? Now, 15 plus 20 plus 10 plus 35 plus 32 by 5 is 22.4. So, this is everybody knows, just to let again tell everybody, so that some people might not be aware of it, that is why. Median. Now, how is median defined? Median has been defined as always the middle value. See, the problem with this, okay, I will explain about the problem. There is a problem with mean which I will explain later on, but now let us understand the median first. The median has been defined as the middle value in the data set, when its elements are arranged in a sequential order, maybe ascending or descending, does not matter. So, what happens is, this is a measure of the location or centrality of the observations. Now, where is the data, the middle point located, that is important. For example, let us say if the number of observations is an odd number means, let us say these are 10, 14, let us say 19, let us say. So, this is, which is the middle one? Now, obviously this is the middle one, right, as per its position, right. Suppose there are, let us say, but there would have been 10, 14, 16 and 19. Now, which is the middle one? So, when you have an odd numbered data, like for example this one, there were 3 data sets, right, 3 data. In such a condition, the middle one was very easy to find out. There is one to the right, there is one to the left, simple. But when there are 4 data, now how do I do it? Now, in this condition, what you do is, first you have to see that there has been arranged in a sequential order. Now, yes, it is in an ascending order, 10, then 14, then 16, then 19, you have done the arrangement. Then what you do is, take the middle 2 points, right. So, the 4 divided by the total is 4. So, the second, so the middle one was this one, and then n by 2 plus 1. So, this one, right. So, this 2, the sum of these two, the average of these two is the middle point now. So, that means what, 14 plus 16 is 30 divided by 2, 15. So, the new point is the median is in this case is the median in this case is 15. Okay. So, if the number of observations is an even number, the median is defined as the arithmetic mean of the numerical values of the n by 2 and by 2 plus 1 observations, right. Maybe there is an example. Calculate the median of the following data that relates to the service time in per customer of 7 customers at a railway reservation counter. So, 3.5, 4.5, 3, 3.85, 5.54. Now, if you see this data is not arranged, right. First you arrange them. Now, how do I arrange? The smallest one I have taken is 3, 3.5, 3.8, 4, 4.5, 5, 5.5, correct. Now, there are 7 data points. So, obviously, if there are 7 data points, which is the middle one? Now, the middle one is this one, right. So, there are 3 this side, 3 this side. So, 7 the third point. So, here in this case, what is the corresponding value for this one? Now, 4. So, that means the median is 4 minutes, the median is 4 minutes per customer, right. Last is the mode. Now, what is this mode? The mode is a measure of location recognized by the location of the most frequently occurring value. Now, in a data set, which data is most frequently occurring? Now, that is basically the mode, right. A mode is that value of an observation which occurs most frequently, right. That is the point with the highest frequency. I will tell you in the next class. Today we will wind up this class here. In the next class, in the next lecture, basically we will try to talk little more on the mode, and then what is the difference between mean, median, mode and the other data parameters that are connected with any data analysis, final data analysis techniques. Okay. So, okay, thank you very much.